today can go sideways in an instant. What's here today can be gone tomorrow. We live in a world full of uncertainty. Are you ready to survive? This is the Weathered Soul.
All right, how you guys doing, guys? Welcome to episode 15 of the Weathered Soul, the awakening, the discussion on the woke and the awakened. My special guest, John Odermatt, is going to be here in a couple of minutes, but I want to thank you guys for being here for the show today. It's been a real great time doing this. I've got brand new setups and all this other good stuff that I've been doing with my StreamYard podcast. I'm glad you're here. And I just wanted to say, number one, that there's a couple things that you could do to help me out with this podcast. Number one, I'm a value for value podcaster right now. And what that means is that you can give me your time, your talents, or your treasures. And you can do that one of three ways. The first way that you can give me your time. And you can give me your time by watching or listening to my podcast on Odyssey, Rumble, or YouTube, or you can catch me on any podcaster. You can also use your talents and send me stuff like memes and all kinds of other good material, and you can send those to me at Twitter, or at my Facebook page right there, or you can go and email me at bruce@weatheredsoul.com. All these things are down there at the bottom there in the show notes, and you can contact me anywhere. Or you can give me some of your treasures, and I take cash and I take Bitcoin, and like I said, all those, everything's down there. I take Venmo, I take Sats through Fountain app, I take money through Cash App. Anything you want to donate, it'd be more than welcome. So, and then all of a sudden, I also take comments. I also take 5-star reviews over on iTunes and all that stuff. So we got all those preliminary things out of the way. I just want to make sure that you guys know that, like I said, I love you guys being here. I love you guys being here every week. It's been, the viewership has been going up. The listenership is skyrocketing now, and I'm really happy. But today, me and my guest, John Odermatt, and I will be having a conversation about wokeism that has gripped our society, and those of us who have become awakened, and those of us who become awakened. And yes, there is a difference from the cancel culture to the WEF, who wants us to eat the bugs and be happy. The complete turnaround of a specific value that drove people like Walt Disney to envision Disneyland and his culture, and the demise of the decisions of the wokeism that is killing a brand that was once proud. I need to say little of those who us remember the wholesome moral values that we once treasured, and these virtues that I speak of were colorblind, and they continue to be. In Ecclesiastes, it was written that there's nothing new under the sun, and although this is true, each generation sees a change in the fabric of our society. As for me, I cannot recognize the speed as to which society is this society is declining. And you can call me a boomer, you can call me old, you can call me whatever you want. Woke is not one of them. I wrote this and I posted it on Facebook a couple weeks ago, and it is fitting for the opener of today's topic. And it went something like this. Yes, this world has gone to hell in a handbag. And every generation says that. And every generation has had its heyday. And I'm extremely concerned about those born after 9/11. We'll be looking back as we do now and thinking how normal things were in their time. From the revolving door of poor leadership choices to the cultural changes brought by to the exposures of social media, our world has changed. The so-called woke people of today, that includes even people in my own generation who have joined, participate, and practice of the new religion of self-hate, state worship, all suffer from an extreme case of Stockholm syndrome. They look in disgust at the norms of the 60s, the 70s, and the 80s, which were the years of my youth. The values, decency, and respect and the reverence were all taught to me in my youth have since been replaced by a nefarious and repetitive need to place blame on race, character, and spirituality. And I look upon the landscape of our society, and I don't see much hope for a return to sanity. And by the way, back in the day, in the 60s, 70s, and 80s, they placed blame on these same values. The older generation in my youth used to look at us the same way as I look at society now. And I still hear this comment by my grandparents and my uncles and aunts and everybody that said, look, these are the kids that will be running the world someday. And I'm quite sure that this generational, and I won't be here, thank God, to see what becomes from the ramifications of the woke generation. But rest assured, when their generation looks back at this particular time, their youth and their heyday, oddly enough, they will say, as every generation before them, that yes, this world has gone to hell in a handbag. I'd like to welcome you to episode 15 of The Weathered Soul. It is March 6th, 2023, and I am so glad to be here with all of you today. And I got my special guest here. I'm going to bring him up right now, John Odermatt of the Lions of Liberty and his podcast, Finding Freedom. And how you doing today, John?
Doing good, Bruce. How about you?
I'm doing great, man. I listened to your podcast this morning on my way to work, and I was just cheering the whole way down, all the way down the freeway, because I was going like, damn, that's my podcast for today.
Yeah, I think what we were talking before the show, and I think this is a topic that I think we've both kind of been stewing on, for the past several weeks or months. But I think we have a lot of common ground in where we think we'll find the solution.
Yeah, well, it's a different type of show today, because usually you're on with me on the side hustles that I do and things like that. But a lot of people that listen to this show also know you from Lions of Liberty and Finding Freedom, and I'll let you go ahead and plug that a little later. But I just wanted to make sure that when we got together and we talked about this, that we were kind of like in this situation where we're just kind of casual, talking back and forth. I kind of like that kind of dichotomy that we have going back and forth. And it's just really interesting when I was talking about the monologue of today's show, is that these are the things that even our grandparents and our uncles and our aunts that we grew up with were looked at us when we were kids, and we were odd, and we were doing this and we were doing that, and saying that, these kids are going to be the ones that are going to be running this place one of these days.
Yeah. I mean, when you look back on, I don't know if you watch Yellowstone, or if you've watched the prequels to it. Have you watched any of that?
No, I haven't watched any of that. My wife does, but yeah.
Yeah, they're pretty good, especially the prequels, 1883 and 1923. But I mean, I'm not going to be a spoiler or anything, or really
no,
talk
you go
about
ahead.
The show.
You go ahead.
Just as but no, just thinking back to those days. 1883, well, even more so, 1923, that's 100 years ago. That's not that long ago. And you look back at that show and you look at the history of what was happening during that time. You had the introduction of the automobile. A lot of places were getting electricity for the first time out in rural areas. And you just think about how much has changed, the speed of the transformation of what we've seen as humans in the past 100 years. And it's crazy. Like, it's totally crazy to try to wrap your mind around it, really.
Yeah, I look at that, and I do watch some similar shows and stuff like that, and like you said, the speed of what's going on now that's what's incredible to me. I mean, in this last probably 20 years, and I'm 63, so since I was in my 40s, probably even a little earlier than that, the speed as to which the culture is changing and the generational stuff is changing, to me is so fast. And I don't know what it was like in my grandparents' days. I mean, I know that they saw different things than we saw here, but I mean, it really is. I think the advent of social media and things like this, the internet age and stuff like that, has just accelerated things so much. It is just incredible. And some of the issues that you took this morning, the pace is just accelerating, and that was one of my main concerns or main topics that I wanted to get to, is to the speed of what all this is taking place.
Yeah, and I mean, I think it's happened in a way. Like my generation. I'm a little younger than you. I'm going to turn 40 this year.
Ooh.
But I'm in that generation which they call millennials, which it's really two generations. there's really older millennials, which is me, the people who are, late 30s, 40s or early 40s. And then there's people, under 35, and I forget how far it goes.
Right.
But it really is. So the older millennials, we straddle the advent of the internet. So I remember what it was like before the internet. I remember growing up and, playing with my friends outside, and sure, there were video games and stuff, and you had Nintendo and all that stuff. But, we didn't have a phone where we carried it around. I didn't get a phone until I was 18 years old. You weren't just totally immersed in technology, immersed in just things vying for your attention. That's like the biggest thing now. Like everything is vying for your attention. So like the younger generations, Gen Z and whatever the generation younger than them is, I mean, this is uncharted territory entirely. Yeah. And I don't know what the heck is going to happen.
Well, as for me, growing up as a boomer in the 60s and the 70s and the 80s, the biggest amplification that we had as far as society and things being kind of pushed in our faces were Saturday morning cartoons and the ads that we had on Saturday morning cartoons. And then the advent of kind of network news and things like that, where, I grew up in the time where, when I first remember the news, I remember the news of, anti-war. I remember seeing the, people in Berkeley and in San Francisco protesting and things like that. So some of those people were kind of my heroes, and now I see them now, and now they're just part of the establishment, part of the problem. So, but like I said, the amplification of at that time about the technology of that time was color TV and FM radio and things like that. And the biggest things, like I said, were Saturday morning TV, FM radio, putting it in your face as far as what was going on with great big concerts and stuff like that. So, and now as I'm looking, as I look at my daughter, and she's into the social media and stuff, and they're into the TikToks and started out with Facebook and probably started out with MySpace way before that. I remember the MySpace when it first came out. And my daughter was into that. Even I was dabbling in that, and then it came into Facebook. Since has been Twitter, that was dying before Trump became a candidate for president. Twitter was on its dying edge. They can thank President Trump for bringing them back into life, and then Elon Musk got them. But then TikTok has really, really taken off, and I just think for a platform for anybody in the fringes, and I really want to talk about the fringes because that's what really kind of the wokeism is, and we're going to get into that. Is that the wokeism kind of tends to be it goes on the far right, it goes on the far left, and I guess there is a far middle for us too, because we get slammed on a lot of things. So that's kind of where I came up with and how I got entered into knowing that these times are changing, but I think that they're changing way, way faster.
Yeah, and I don't know how fringe wokeism is. It seems pretty mainstream, right? Because the woke really have captured the corporate media. They've captured our, academia, institutions of higher learning. They've captured corporate America. So maybe they're not the majority, but they certainly control the main channels of communication and the way that people make a living, which is pretty terrifying, honestly. When you look at the message that they're drilling through, and how they're dividing people, and how they're forcing people into boxes, forcing people really into conflict with each other.
Right. Yeah, because I look at the woke generation, and I want to call them the woke generation, even though some of them include people that are my age and people that I know, and a lot of the people that I hang out with, because I live here in liberal California. I mean, almost the most liberal freaking county that you can think of. I live here in Santa Clara County. And I got a lot of friends that some of them are conservative, some of them are liberal, some of them are deep progressives. And a lot of them, they just don't have that. I mean, there's some of them that are really, really woke, that are really, really to the the far side, And then there's some of them going like, dude, I feel just like you. What's going on? So to me, it looks like I don't know if you've experienced this before or that because you've had a lot of guests on your show, but it really is a minority of people that really drives, kind of left, right, center, in your face, kind of what I call marketing of news and other things like that. I really think, and I can see it because you can see, the division that we have in race relations right now, the division that we have in sexual orientation and all that other stuff. There's really been going on forever, and it really is a minority of people that really drive that hammer home to the corporations in the news cycle that really do affect what we see on TV and what we see in marketing these days.
Well, I mean, it's people in this minority group of people, really the corporate media, right? They're getting their marching orders from somewhere. And I know we're going to talk a little bit about the media later on and talk about Russell Brand later, but just to talk about, the structure of the media and, the media, Fox News is owned by Rupert Murdoch. A lot of these, big media empires are either owned by or are getting funding from BlackRock and Vanguard. Pharmaceutical companies are getting funded from BlackRock and Vanguard. I've said before, if you watch cable news, if you watch really any TV, what's the number one type of commercial you're going to see? You're going to see pharmaceutical ads.
Pharmaceuticals.
so really television is just killing time between pharmaceutical ads. And it's crazy. It's crazy to think that, the person who is paying the salaries of the television station to keep it on the air, the pharmaceutical companies, by way of BlackRock and Vanguard, are not going to have some sort of say into what is said by the news anchors, by the people holding opinions.
Right. Yeah, but I hate to seem to think that I'm so far out of touch because a lot of times we talk about our politicians and things in Washington, D.C. and in Congress being so far out of touch that, some of them have never had a job. Some of them have never done this and some of them never. I hate to feel like I'm the same way, but when I walk around and I see what's going on in my town and I go like, okay, well, that person's still wearing a mask. So he's kind of still in that area where he's either scared or being programmed, and this person over here, we got the homeless going on over here, and that's just a situation that has gotten out of hand because of policies that are set forth by the people that run your city, your county is in your state. You've got all kinds of situations where you can walk around and see what I want to call the fringes, because I do see them as fringes because most of the people that I hang out with they see the same thing, they complain about the same thing, although they're politically or sociology different than I am, but
but they keep voting for it, right?
Exactly. That's what I keep saying. So Michelle Tandler, who is one of the people that I follow on Twitter, she's from San Francisco. She travels back and forth from San Francisco to New York. She's really, really good at writing and asking questions on Twitter, and she's got a pretty good following going on there. And she just asks the questions of her own city. Why are we doing this? Why do we got these open air drug markets? Why we have this open border policy? Why we have all these situations that we know that are detrimental to our society, yet everybody keeps complaining about them. But when it comes down to electing people into office, we elect the same clowns into office that let the same thing is going on. And it's just, it's maddening to us who think that we're normal and that we read things every day. And I kind of look at us, you and me, John, as somebody who actually gets our prompts from regular mainstream media, and then we take that news that we see there and then we kind of dice into it and break it down into other places where we find our facts and our opinions and other things like that, put them all together and come up with an opinion that we have on our podcast. So
I mean everyone, and I think it's an important point to make. Everyone, even us, me and you, Bruce, everyone gets their opinions assigned to them from somewhere. The difference is, though, when that opinion is assigned to you, are you going out and are you testing that opinion? Or are you making sure that you're not just buying up propaganda? So you always have to be testing your opinions, because
Right.
That's what we do when we get the news, be it on Twitter, be it, from cable, hopefully not from cable news shows, but when you hear news, I mean, that's something coming into your brain. That's not something we thought of. So it's being assigned to us, and
Right.
we're going to have a reaction to it based on other opinions that have been assigned to us over time. So we always have to be challenging our beliefs and really the reality of what we're consuming.
Yeah. Well, I really do, because, first thing I do in the morning, before I stop praying and doing all the other stuff that I have to do is that I go look at the news. And the first place I really go look into, because it's habit, and that's what I do, is I go to Fox News. And I go to the Fox News webpage, and oh my God, that place is just, it's like it's like going and being at the supermarket in line with your groceries and looking at the National Enquirer.
They even changed the website to look more like that, I think.
Exactly. It is definitely marketing at its best, right?
Yeah.
And you go to CNN and they haven't done really anything. There's kind of like a generic website, and MSNBC is even worse. But I do go to those three places and look at stuff. I get my prompts from them. I don't, I don't get really, if anything emotionally reacts to me, it's more podcasts than anything else. When I'm listening to podcasts, that's what gets me emotional about things. And when I looked at listened to your podcast this morning, that's the one that got me emotional. I'm like, oh, okay, so let's get revved up on this. But to even go further, is that I'll get my prompts from there, and then it's all out there and it's all marketed to get you to give an emotional response. But to most people, and even some of the people that I say that they're all looking around going like, well, what's going on here? Why is this happening? And all this other stuff, and we got to do something about this. They're more just following the prompts of like I said, Fox News, CNN, and MSNBC. They don't go any farther than that. They won't go outside and go to Sky News. They won't go outside to go see Al Jazeera or any of the other websites outside of the U.S. to see what other people are looking, from the outside looking in, and things like that. And I'll go out there and I'll look at that and see what the opinions are there. Do you happen to do the same thing? Do you go outside of the mainstream media? And I mean, how far do you go?
Yeah. So we used to have one of our Lions of Liberty counterparts, Howie. He used to compile a news link list
Okay.
that he would send out. And I'm trying to find, because I do have the list here, but here it is. Anyway, it was incredible what he would do. He would send out like somewhere between 50 and 200 news links every day from about 15 different websites. And then finally, he just got to the point where he was like, I can't do this anymore. It's taking too much time. I don't know. He did it for like 5 or 6 years. I don't know how he did it, but here's some of the websites. So I have the list now. I'll just do it on my own and go through and look at headlines and, occasionally look at a few articles. But antiwar.com, Reason, Zero Hedge, New York Post, Lou Rockwell, the Gateway Pundit, Twitter, obviously. I'm going to go through there a couple times a day. Cointelegraph, The Hill, Al Jazeera, and Politico, and Real Clear Politics. I mean, you do get, it's not all right or all left or all libertarian or all conservative. It's kind of a mix of everything.
Yeah, I use Ground News, and Ground News is a really good resource that you can get to, and they do the bias graphing on news items. You can go there and you can see how much of the right media had reported on something, how much of the left, and how much of the center was going. But it was just it's an interesting way to actually go in and look a little deeper into the news that you see every day. Because if you're just taking your cues from Tucker Carlson or Morning Joe or anybody like that, you're just I look at people sometimes. I go like, come on, you could do better. We could be better than that.
Well, it's even outside of like political news, like even just like my morning like sports talk radio show. or those guys. I listen to their opinions on sports. I'm like, this is just terrible. They're just coming up with opinions to try to make people angry, so people call in to stir up controversy. So they do the same thing on sports talk radio as they do on Fox News or MSNBC or CNN. It's the same model. It's crazy.
Right, absolutely. Well, the big news is that Russell Brand made some big waves this weekend, and it was just a really, really cool interview that he did. I chopped up about half of what you posted this morning. I want to share with everybody, and it has to do with Bill Maher. He was on Bill Maher on Friday night with John Hellman, who was an NBC commentator on the Morning Joe show. And Russell Brand, who anybody who knows anything about Russell Brand knows that he's very outspoken. He is very just influential, and I love the guy. I mean, he's not the most conservative guy in the world, but and neither is Bill Maher. But when they get their heads right and they start speaking truth, I mean, truth is truth, and you can't deny it. So I want to share something with you guys real quick, and we'll be right back to talk about it. Okay, here we go.
I'd like to hear a specific example of an MSNBC correspondent or anchor being on television saying something they knew was false, and we're saying behind the scenes to people, I'm about to go out, and we know that the election wasn't stolen or something equivalent. Example. But I will go out on television and say the opposite. I will lie.
When's my answer?
Just give me the specific example.
I understand the basic point.
Give me a specific example.
All right.
I'm with you. I think it's a false equivalency, Russell.
It's not.
That's your own bias.
It's not about bias. It's a false equivalency because you don't actually know anything about any of these organizations you're talking about. Even on MSNBC ones, big fucking deal.
My darling, it was more than enough.
You can't come up with
such a
you don't have a single actual fact.
Do you want an example? Yes.
The ludicrous, outrageous criticisms of Joe Rogan around ivermectin, deliberately referring to it as a horse medicine when they know it's an effective medicine.
Yeah, that's not a bad
Rachel
example.
Maddow turning up on the TV saying, if you take this vaccine, you're not going to get it, when it hadn't been clinically trialed for transmission. You have to listen.
Wait.
Do you think you can improve America by determinedly and avowedly condemning Fox News without acknowledging that you're participating in the same game? Did you not just listen to Bernie Sanders, someone who plainly, legitimately believes in this country and believes it's possible to change, but is bound by corruption, is bound by the lobbying system? Surely it's clear to you, Bill, as one of the great pundits and experts and comic voices, that systemic change is required. Money has to be taken out of politics. We need new political systems that genuinely represent ordinary Americans so that we can overcome cultural differences. And bickering about which propagandist network is the worst is not going to save a single American life, not improve the life of a single American child, not going to improve America's standing in the world, and the world needs a strong America. I'll tell you that.
That was good.
Yeah, it was good. Very good. It was for sure. A couple things stand out on that. Number one, Russell Brand is just incredible as far as an influencer. I mean, he knows how to work the people that he's talking to. He uses a lot of touching and stuff like that. And it's that is really powerful when you're doing that. And you touch somebody and go, look, you need to listen here, because this is important. But a couple of things that were said in that interview, and first and foremost, it was Bill Maher. He talks about false equivalency, and to me, when we're talking about false equivalency, it gets thrown around so irresponsibly, because when you're trying to make a point, and then people are they're very disingenuous when they throw out that phrase. It's a false equivalency. And to me, that just shuts me. It basically shuts me down. And I just go like, okay, well, you're not going to listen to anything that I have to say. So, I might as well be turning around and talking to this wall. So, I mean, that's one of the first things that was kind of got me in the face. And then when Russell Brand started bringing up the actual subjects of what he was talking about, the actual instances, then what's his name? John kept saying, no, non-responsive. He had no recourse. He had nothing. He was
nothing at all.
backpedaling. Yeah, he was backpedaling and doing this, trying not to get hit. So, I mean, just a powerful example of just the denial out there that you see from the woke people like John.
Yeah, and I think him bringing up ivermectin, and hopefully this doesn't get your YouTube demonetized.
I hope so.
The episode I published that we talked about earlier, published today, is demonetized on YouTube, probably because I mentioned ivermectin, but whatever. That is such a great example. And sure, it's not exactly the same scenario as what Heilman or Heileman or whatever his name is was talking about, where Hannity and others have gone on record saying that and you know what? I don't know if the election was stolen or not. So how do they know if it was stolen or not? Anyway, that's a whole different discussion. But I guess they went on record saying that they knew it wasn't stolen, and they said it anyway just to appease the viewers. But the thing with ivermectin, which has always just rubbed me the wrong way with the way that the corporate press reported on it from the start, it was so clear that they had labeled it horse dewormer, and that was the only thing you were going to say. And it was so bizarre because ivermectin has been used obviously in Africa to treat river blindness. It's been used in veterinary medicine on many other animals than horses. Why are they just saying horse dewormer? Every single pundit is saying horse dewormer. That was being fed to them. It was remarkable misinformation. That's the definition of propaganda.
Right,
I mean, you can't get more propaganda than that.
Well, I kind of remember right around that time when we were having that having that discussion about ivermectin, and even before that, when Trump was running for president for his first time, is that they came out with this expose of this news corporation that a bunch of these people that were employed by all these news stations around the U.S. and they all had a phrase line that they were all giving the same phrase line in their newscasts, and they went around to each city, and they were putting everybody the same taglines and it was it's incredible because, like you said, somebody's feeding them, and it's basically whoever's paying the bills is going to get their word out. Whether that be pharmaceutical industry, whether that be the war machine, whether that be the WEF who wants you to eat the bugs and be happy. And, it all depends on who it is. So I think what we need to do, and this next clip that we're going to see from, what is his name? Witt, is that his name? Will Witt.
Will Witt.
Yeah, the first time I heard of him today.
Me too.
Was from you. And I was surprised at what he had to say. Let's listen to him really quick, and we'll add that to the stream here.
Right, coming out and saying, oh, well, the left, they're hypocrites. Has that done anything for us? If a guy with a gun has a gun right in your face and you tell him that is wrong, that is immoral for him to do so, and he still shoots you, who wins in that scenario? Right? That's what it is like with the left. When we come and do all this, facts and logic, calling out the hypocrisy all the time, but not actually putting action towards the things that we want to accomplish, we are accomplishing nothing, and we are actually going backwards. And you find that conservative media today is more reactionary than it has ever been before. And we are continuing to lose ground on every cultural issue because we can't get our act together. If we want to actually change America, it is about action. I mean, look at what conservatives right now in America are focused on. We got this Daily Wire nonsense and the Blaze media, these Republicans in Congress who are just doing what they do so they can get Twitter clips. They don't actually care about us. So what are we actually getting done? What do we actually care about? I hear so many times, I hear from people, and they'll tell me, when will America change? When will the Republican Party change? When is my neighborhood going to change? When is politics going to change? But no one's ever asking, when will I change? When am I going to actually do something to get myself out of despondency, to do something brave and admirable and courageous to fix myself? Because that's the hard question. It's very easy to look at Joe Biden stumbling around on TV and say, well, our country sucks because of him. No, I think we all need to look in the mirror and look on our social media and everything we're doing and say, hey, maybe this country is going downhill somewhat because of us, and that we need to take some responsibility for what has happened.
What a powerful message that guy had to say. And I've never heard of him until today. Like you said, you hadn't heard of him until you ran across that clip. And it does. It says a lot. I mean, as a conservative, as a libertarian, and that leans on the conservative side, I would have to say that, yeah, we complain a lot about a lot of things. We complain about, the woke being too woke, and, I want to be awakened, and I'm going to do, my homesteading. I'm going to do my prepping, my how-to, my permaculture that I'm into now, and I'm just going to beat everything. But the main point is that I want that message to be spread out. But we fall short because we have all these things that we're just in front and center right now. And as your Michael Knowles clip that you had on your podcast today about the transgenderism issue is really right now front and center. And to me, it hit me in a way that I went, yeah, and when you said, yeah, we started talking about they, and then I always spoke about they as being those other people.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. They is us. I think
they is us.
And I mean, this is something that, I've been thinking about this for years, and it's really started to make more sense to me lately. But libertarians will always, not all libertarians, but a large group of libertarians will always blame the state, hate the state. It's the state's fault for doing this. It's the state's fault for that we're going to war. It's the state's fault we're being taxed. Well, who makes up the state?
Yeah.
Other human beings.
Yeah.
They're no different than us.
Absolutely.
They've made different choices. Maybe they're sociopaths or psychopaths or whatever, but at the end of the day, they've gotten in that position because a group of other human beings made up of people in our community, our neighbors, our friends, have put them there. So just hating the state, you're just hating yourself.
yourself, your neighbor, and your across the street, the guy that cuts your meat, the guy that sells you eggs.
Exactly.
It's all, because we're all in this we're still all in this melting pot that we call America here, and like I said, we could talk about the transgender issues, and what's going on with the, the cross dressers dancing in front of the kids. I'm more appalled at the parents that let them be there, than anything.
Me too.
We did give them a stage to go ahead and do this because of the ways that we have become this permissive society like that. And it's a shame that we have, but we have nobody to blame. And I've always said that. And most of my Twitter and Facebook replies go to a lot of people that just go like, hey, we did this to ourselves. We got the government that we deserve because that's the government that we put in there. And we could talk all about national elections and picking the right president or picking the right senator or picking the right House person. We got to pick the right people that at the start. And the start is actually your school board. That's where it starts. It doesn't start at City Hall, really. It starts at your school board. Those are the people that are most influential on what's going on in your community. And you got to make sure in all these school board elections and stuff, you don't have to declare who you are. Whether you're a Democrat, a Republican, atheist, a Christian, a libertarian.
Maybe in California, in Pennsylvania.
They don't have to do that. They don't have to do that here.
Everything's partisan in Pennsylvania.
You're undeclared here. And so you really don't know unless you know who you are. And then, those people don't go out and campaign. You might get a flyer every now and then, and they just have the normal mumbo jumbo that they have on it. I'm going to play, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do that. But for the most part, you don't know any of these people until you go to the ballot box and you go like, who the hell am I freaking selecting?
So one of my good friends from high school, we're still good friends. He lives in a community nearby me here outside of Pittsburgh, and he's on his local school board, and he's like the least political guy you'll ever meet. And I don't want to say that he had ulterior motives for joining the school board, but essentially he wanted to be in a position to help his business. I'll just put it that way, to give himself that label, essentially, right? Not in a nefarious way or anything, but just to get his name out there. And that's why a lot of people do get on the school board.
I'm telling you, yeah.
And then they get all this power, and then they don't have a principled base to work off of, so that they can be swayed by people making emotional arguments or who knows what, getting
coming in,
paid
buying
off,
a bunch
maybe.
of product from the store, you know, all the rest
Exactly.
of the things. And that's what I'm just saying. So, I mean, a lot of people, I typically, I don't vote in my school board elections, only because of the fact that nobody's ever knocked on my door to come talk to me about, you know, if they want to be part of my school board. And so if I don't know you, probably not voting for you. I mean,
You should find out who's running for your local school board and go knock on their door.
yeah.
Flip it on them.
There you go. And it's kind of like, you know, district judges and you know, all these other, you know, people that you just don't even know, that you just kind of check the box because they're either R, L, or D. You know, you really don't know anything about them. So for the most part, you know, I don't. So I think it's a very, as much as the small amount of people that vote the national election, because there's really only about 25% of the population that actually votes in the national election. So, and then it's a 50-50 split between there. So you got like 12 to 15% of the people who actually make the decisions on the electoral college side of who gets to run the country. It's even less when you're talking about your city councils, when you're talking about your school boards. Your city councils might get a little bit more exposure. I pretty much know all my city council members, and you know, I have a beer with one or two of them, you know, every so often, but I know them, you know, personally. So those people I do know, and but we need to get more personal in there. I think we need to get more personal in our communities, because that's where the change starts. And the change will not start like it starts there, and then it goes to your city council, and it goes to your county, and it goes to your state, and then it goes national. So we need to start there, and we need to influence those people, and we need to, you know, hammer down and say, look, this is the kind of environment that we want for our kids. I think California is a lost cause, but who knows? Maybe maybe God will intervene someday, and and we'll get back to a more centrist type of government, instead of just this whole rigmarole that we got going on in our schools now. It's crazy.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if California's a lost cause, but I mean, the thing that I like take away from that last, you know, that Will Witt, the guy we heard give that speech at CPAC, is, you know, at the end of the day, you know, what are we doing? You know, what are we like? How are we leading people? You know, how are we leading people in our community? What kind of presence are we putting up on social media? Are we putting a presence up there where we're just complaining and bitching about, you know, what the wokes are saying, or you know, what Joe Biden did, or the last time Joe Biden fell up the stairs trying to get on the plane? But, and I mean, I'm not going to say like you shouldn't post funny memes and, you know, have a good laugh, but you got to provide like an alternative course. You got to build up some sort of framework where people can actually see, okay, well, this is where the corporate press, or this is where mainstream media is leading us. But there's these other people who are talking about some really sensible things, and they're, you know, they're good, down to earth people. They're godly people. You know, they're people that are principled, and start putting that out there, and people see that, and that's very, very influential.
Yeah, I was going to say, I was going to make that remark, is that, you know, I don't want to pat ourselves on the back here, because, you know, like I said, you know, me and you, we both fall all over ourselves as soon as we put our 2 feet on the ground in the morning. But to lead by example is extremely important when you're talking about not only your family, but your friends, and just outside your door in your community, to show an example of what, you know, that you can be counted on, that you can be trusted, that you provide, that you know, you have value. I think that really is a lost situation. And when I first moved here to Gilroy, which I came from San Jose, California, which was only 30 minutes away, but when I first came to Gilroy, it was a more rural town. And in San Jose, it's still kind of a little private. You know, there used to be a lot of families and community there, but you know, it's got so big, and everybody kind of closed themselves behind closed doors. But first thing I did when I got here is I went to, you know, just absolutely the perimeter of my house, which is 4 to 6 houses that we have around, introduced myself and said, hey, this is who I am, blah, 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 you know, how you doing? You know, just, you know, introduce yourself, get to know your neighbor,
Yeah.
get to know your community, and, and if you start with your neighbors, and you can expand out from there. So I know every neighbor that I have, up and down the street, and how many people know even their neighbor now. I mean,
Yeah, I need to
you'd
do
be
a better
surprised.
job at that. I mean, yeah, there's people that have moved in. It's tough in where I live in Western Pennsylvania, because we had 2 different houses on opposite sides of us move in the middle of winter. It's hard to meet people in the winter because they're never outside. But yeah, I got to do a better job at that.
Yeah, in fact, I know I don't know everybody on my street, but I've got a good proportion of it going down. And I'm just a social guy anyway. So I get into a crowd, and I'm, slap people on the back, give them a beer, and say, "Hey, how you doing? This is who I am."
Yeah.
I'm just one of those guys. I'm the guy that walks into a party and wants to know everybody. So it's kind of easy for me. But so going forward and trying to find solutions in what we've got going on here, and talking about that's one of those things that I'm kind of going to work on getting out of, because now that I have been aware that, hey, I am they, that's something that kind of hit me hard, and that was basically really the thing that shined out on me in your podcast today was the realization that, hey, they is me, and what are we doing, and what can we do to do better, and it really doesn't matter whether it's an R, a D, or an L, or a P, or a green, or whatever, as long as that person has good intentions, got good values, demonstrates those values out in the open, and there's not too many bones in the closet. I can really go there with somebody like that. So
yeah, that made me think of something that I've been meaning to talk about on my show. But there's a lot of Christians who, the way they approach social media, the way they approach like Instagram, for example, is they'll say, "Okay, I'll be on Instagram, but I'm going to make a private account, just friends and family," rather than using it as an outlet, a way to show what it's like to live life as a Christian,
right.
Which I think it's kind of cowardly to kind of block yourself off from the world. It really doesn't make any sense to me.
Right.
But I think there's a lot of people who do that. And I think that's one of the reasons why, like, the woke mob seems so amplified.
Well, I think they're amplified because not only they've been given a bold stance, and they've been given this open door of social media and a exposure to the world that most Christians, as far as when I grew up Catholic, and we were very, very kind of closed in as far as our religion was concerned.
Yeah.
And as I grew older, I grew out of religion for a while. I came back into religion. I'm evangelical now, and then still I don't go out there and I don't, I'm trying to save you and all this other stuff, because that turns a lot of people off. And in fact, there's a lot of people that subscribe to me on my Facebook pages and other things that they constantly saying, "Please don't shove this down my throat." Well, I don't shove it down your throat. What I do is I give you an example, and I show you an example of who I am and what I do and how I am and how I talk and how I act and how I present. Can I do a better job? Absolutely do a better job. I'm not perfect. I'm saved, but I'm not perfect. and every day, and every day, I pray before I get up in the morning, and by the time I hit the floor, I'm done. So, I've already fell. So, it's one of those things that we got to we always have to be on our toes every time, because they're looking at us. They're watching us, and they see our weaknesses, and they see that we fall, and then they see that we fall, and then we don't apologize, or we don't realize, and things like that. And all of a sudden, there's their opening. There's their opening that they get into. They go, see. So it's like I always got to be aware of the log in my eye. Because sometimes it's a great big pine tree coming out of there, because I'm trying to pull the splinter out of yours. Yeah, it's weird, man. It's just a constant battle, and that's what they said it was going to be. It was going to be a constant battle.
Yeah, It certainly is. And, it is. And, I'm not saying that Christians or anybody who's trying to convey, really a message counter to the woke message. I kind of use Christians as an example because
Right.
I'm a Christian and that's the way I look at it. But there's an art form to it. And don't think that, the people who are promoting this woke message aren't doing so with, the intent to persuade and the intent to, really win over hearts and minds, because they are. I mean, they are winning over a lot of people. They're winning over, obviously, like we talked about at the top of the show, academia, corporate America, the media. So we're way behind.
Right. Yeah.
It's
They've got a
lot of
good
ground to
game.
make.
They've got a good
Yeah.
game for sure. But hey, John, man, it's been a great time talking to you, man. It always is a great
Yeah.
time. I really wanted to get you away from what we usually talk about, which is our side business and stuff that me and you are into,
Sure.
and get you into this one-on-one situation where we just have a conversation, man. And I really appreciate you being on the show. So I want you to go ahead and plug yourself. I've got this little web page that I pulled up here. And this is your webpage, right?
Yep, there it is. There's Lions of Liberty. So that's lionsofliberty.com. And you can find us on Twitter, on Instagram at Lions of Liberty. And then our podcast, everywhere podcasts are everywhere podcasts are found. It's getting late here on the East Coast. The Lions of Liberty Network, but I also have a separate solo feed for Finding Freedom. So if you're looking just to subscribe to my shows, and so, I mean, sometimes that is helpful from a sharing standpoint. If you're telling someone, hey, you got to check out this episode by John where he talked about this, rather than sending them the whole Lions of Liberty feed, sometimes it's nice just to send the Finding Freedom feed. So
right. Well, John, I really enjoy your podcast, and today just hit me in the right spot. So that's why I gave you a call, because I knew you'd answer your phone and that you would do this with me, man. I really appreciate it. Hope you all had a good time. Again, if you guys like this podcast, go ahead and share this podcast. Hit that share button, hit the like button, hit the little bell up there that reminds you that every time that the Weathered Soul comes on, like I said before, you guys can, I'm shameless, so I need your time. I need your time, and I need your talents, and I need your treasure. And your time you can give me by going to at Weathered Soul at Odyssey, Bruce, aka the Weathered Soul at Rumble, or at the Weathered Soul at YouTube. You can also you can send me your talents by just going over there and replying to me on Twitter at also known as TWS. Or you can follow me at bruce.mcgee over at Facebook, or you can send me an email over at bruce@weatheredsoul.com. And also, I'm always looking for donations for the podcast. You can get me at Venmo at aka the Weathered Soul for Venmo. Fountain app, if you want to send me some sats and some Bitcoin, also known as TWS at fountain.fm, and net at Cash App at $ aka the Weathered Soul. That's how you can support me and our efforts. John, it's been really good. Thank you much again.
Been awesome.
And I hope you have a great evening. I know it's getting late there. Thank you for getting on, and we will talk to you guys later. Have a great day. Love yourself. Why? Because you're worth it. See you later, guys. See you next week.